Hi, everybody. My name is James. I'm the co-director for Military Sci-Fi Media. Welcome to our third annual Onesie meet and greet. It's usually an event where we have some games and some music, and people can just kind of get to know each other and see what fandoms they enjoy together, and see what they want to do for the weekend. Sometimes you make a new friend, and see how that goes. We do have some more of the volunteers for the track that will be joining a little bit later, including the director. She's currently taking care of a few things, and she'll be right back with us. This is also our Ask Me Anything. As you can see, I'm also a Star Wars fan, in addition to the properties that we represent for Military Sci-Fi Media, such as Stargate and Battlestar and Starship Troopers. We also have the Orville, Space 1999, Buck Rogers, Andromeda. New this year, we have Space Force. We also have Personal Space, the web series, Firefly and Serenity, Space Above and Beyond, Babylon 5. So if you're a fan of any of those, just come on there. Oh, let's bring in Wiccy here.
I found the link.
It's there. Thank you for joining us, Wiccy. Should have the director here in just a minute as well.
Oh, wait, are we live right now?
Yes, we are.
Cool.
Starting to figure out where you and Badger were for a moment, but I'll send the link back out so everybody can get joined in.
It's possible that we're all the same amount of dumb and didn't realize where the link was.
That's fine. So we're also part of the official DragonCon Discord server. If you go to our group on Facebook or look at the public posting that DragonCon Official had, you can join the Discord. When you join in, it'll ask you if you want to register for your badge. That'll take you to the registration channel. Underneath the posting in the bottom left, there'll be kind of a green sort of badge icon you have to click on to activate your access for the rest of the Discord servers. And then you can go to the information booth and click on the hotel or building that you're interested in the content for, and that'll add the channels for that location to your access for the Discord. It's a little complicated, but the icons for all the hotels are usually pretty iconic. There's kind of a Marriott carpet icon for the Marriott. You've got the Westin Tower for the Westin. America's Mart is the several buildings. So they try to make it intuitive as possible to get joined on that. So those are kind of fun.
It's a dragon, and if you can't tell, it's got wings. And it's got a tail, but I'm not standing up, so.
Right. Right. The captain's getting ready to join us here, so I'm going to slide over just a little bit.
Hello. So, how's everybody doing tonight so far?
Well, I'm okay.
Okay. All right. So, a couple things to talk about now that we're getting things started for this whole shebang of virtual DragonCon. DragonCon goes virtual. One of the things that I want us to be able to do throughout this weekend is just be able to check in with each other, have a good time, deal with questions as they come up, because there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff going on. There's going to be questions about whether or not we should click on a particular link to check a video, or whether we should go to the streaming app, what we need to do to get to where. There's going to be questions about Discord. Lots of questions about Discord. And that's okay. We will work on trying to sort all that stuff out together. But there's also often questions about our track. And that's some of the stuff that I want us to be able to have to talk about. So let's go ahead and get into a few things, though. Have we done official introductions so far?
Not official introductions for Wiccy. I did introduce myself when I was known.
All right, sir. Yes, this is James Henson, the second for Military Sci-Fi Media. And I am Karen Henson, the track director for Military Sci-Fi Media, or MSFM, because that's a lot quicker to say, believe it or not. And not as many people own that acronym, so I'm going to take it. But we also have one of our awesome and wonderful and very talented track volunteers with us today to... Yeah, no, it's you.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe somebody else showed up.
She's going to tell us a little bit about herself, so take it away, Wiccy.
Hi, I'm Wiccy, band person, track doer thingy person. I do panels sometimes. I'm in my living room. I'm not really sure what else I should say. What else do people want to know?
Basically, are we unmuted? Okay, yes. Okay, basically, how long have you actually been a track volunteer? How long have you volunteered for us, first of all?
I have been with this track. This is what, my 4th year? Like, since it's been this track?
Something like closing in on that. Technically, we've been a track since actually 2016, which is weird to think about because this should have been our 5th year celebration in person.
Yeah.
But, you know, we're still happy to be here. Let's just put it that way. So
I was a volunteer from way back when it was still the Stargate track, but I don't even remember what we called it back then. When we were still in the dungeon.
Tell us about the dark days of the dungeon, Wiccy.
It was a very small room. It was really hard to get to because if you didn't know where it was, you couldn't find it.
It was kind of like sort of a room of requirement, but not exactly.
Sort of. But there was no reception for your cell phone or your computers or anything.
That was the one in the Hyatt, right?
Yes. It was down in the section of the Hyatt that nobody actually knew existed. You know, you'd find that escalator and you'd be like, I didn't even know this was here. Yeah. So yeah. And then I took a few years off from volunteering like at all. And now I'm back. So this would have been my 16th year in person. So.
Well, you're still with us. You're still a person, even if you're not in person. You count. It counts. This all counts, just FYI, in case anybody is listening. It all counts. So one of those things that I wanted to also talk about a little bit is, what is our track? What are we as a group? Why do we have certain things here and there and everywhere? Well, one of the things that you should know about us is, as Wiccy was talking about, we did actually start as an outgrowth out of the Stargate track. And the Stargate track had a couple different iterations. It actually started back in 2006, I believe. Was it? Yeah, 2006. Yeah. And it was originally called Stargate Offworld. And James actually was one of the first people on staff. Period for there. Volunteers. He was one of the first volunteers. Yes. There we go. For that. No staff here, just volunteers. Yes. So once he got into that, then the track grew and it changed a little bit. And then we had other shows getting added into. because you had SG-1, and then Atlantis also came around. And then as time grew on, the name had changed by then to SGMT, because we do love our acronyms. And that actually stood for Stargate Multiverse. And track for the T. That's a track. And then that had a couple extra iterations as well, because there were movies and things to expand through the Stargate universe, as well as, of course, the original movie that started it all. But then they also added Stargate Universe. And then all that kind of went a little bit off because it went off air. Stargate Universe was canceled. No more SGU, which we kept saying SVU because it was the victim of the Stargate world. Okay, maybe that was just me. That was just me. And maybe some of my friends. And that was one of those moments when we started to think to ourselves, okay, we don't have anything currently on the air. Some things were supposed to come on but didn't. MGM was trying to sort some things out. And then next thing you know, we're thinking about how do we move on as a track. And thus, that is when MSFM was born. Because we started to look at some similar shows to us that kind of made sense, kind of fit together. And we felt that they were shows that had a strong team element. That was always a big deal for what we did. There was always a core of ensemble cast actor types that were going through things. And sure, there might be a Monster of the Week situation sometimes, or Alien of the Week in this case. But there was usually some sort of ongoing narrative to it as well. And so other shows like that. And we started out actually with a few of them. Our first actual official year as a track was 2016, as we mentioned. And with 2016, we were actually Battlestar Galactica, Babylon 5, Stargate, and Farscape. So those were our first official, 4 properties. And with those 4 properties, our track was born. Now, of course, that year was also the year that we ended up in the America's Mart, Building 2.
On the 4th floor.
4th floor. For our very first year as a track, and no one could find us half the time because they kept shutting down the building for overflow. That presented a few problems.
I'm so glad I wasn't there that year.
One of the nice things about it, though, is that since they were air walls, we were able to tack things up. And at one point, we had an art project. And so during one of our interactive nights, we had an art contest. And we had basically a fridge wall, so to speak, where everybody could display their favorite artwork that they had created. And we just used T-pens, and we called it a day. And it was good times. And that was also important because as the first bit of a track, we were still trying to get ourselves established. And we mostly had a whole bunch of Stargate stuff to put up, but not so much for our other properties. So that was kind of nice, helped dress up the place a bit. And also our track was blessed in its very first iteration with a visit from some system lords. That was actually kind of neat. James, you want to talk about that a little bit?
So for the media guests, they had them essentially in the large section across the hall from where our track room was at the America's Mart. And they'd gotten there a little bit early, and nobody had really said, this is where you need to hang out or sit or anything, because there really wasn't a backstage area. So they just went wandering and happened to walk across to our track room, where we had a sign-up sheet in the back where people voted for which of their favorite fandoms out of the 4, and we wanted to see at the end of the weekend who came out on top. And we had several people wander across, like Peter Williams.
Apophis, very important to the system. Also, Stan Brown, she was there. Hathor came by.
And they signed under Stargate on the form, and we've still got that in storage.
Was Jacqueline Saluda also there?
I think Jacqueline was there too, and then of course someone signed for Her Highness Salem, a cat, on there somewhere.
Yeah, Salem is the cat of a very dear friend of the track, and she is basically a person or familiar. I don't know, something in cat form that is not actually a cat, but we will probably learn in due time exactly what she is. But yes,
2020 seemed like the time we'd learn that.
Yeah. Salem is the cat of the representative for all of those actors to get them to Dragon Con, their agent for Dragon Con. So we worked with her, and we got to see a lot of the Salem antics going on.
It was good times.
Yeah. When a cat shows up with $100 bill in its mouth and gives it to your guest, you got some issues to work out with your cat.
When the cat decides that lemons must be deposited into the toilet.
And the bathtub.
Issues with the cat. And she loves to get dressed. She loves dressing up. I mean, all right. But that's probably enough about Salem. But you get the idea. This is an interesting cat. But that was our first year. And we were just kind of feeling things out, trying to figure out how to best embrace our new fandoms, because not that they were new to us. I mean, I'd been watching Babylon 5 with my mom since it came out. And additionally, pretty much the same thing for Battlestar Galactica. When the reimagining came out, then I'd already been watching it. I'd seen a few episodes of the original, but I really hadn't gotten into that previously. So that was one of those things that, I still had to explore. But, I'd seen, like, everything just about, except for the last episode of the reimagining of BSG, which I will talk about another time, but not that episode. Not that one. Okay, so then Farscape, actually, I had never really gotten as much into it, although I've kind of gotten a little bit further in now, of course, and also it helps that you have people like Ben Browder and Claudia Black and Gigi Edgley and all the amazing people who are part of it. So, when you get to know them as people as well at con, it's really awesome then to kind of see those personalities quirk and change a little bit as they actually practice their craft in an episode. And that part's always kind of neat. So that's been kind of it was a really nice part to come out of that first year, just getting to know some of those other properties and getting to kind of encounter the fandom. And somebody posted a flashback photo earlier. It had all of the Babylon 5 contingents. We had some Centauri. There was at least one Minbari. There were a couple of others there too. So it was a good crew. And yeah, that's always one of my favorite parts, though, when people just start busting out the cosplay, especially B5 cosplay. That's good stuff.
That was also the year that we had a giant ensemble of Farscape cosplayers. That was the entire crew, except for Rigel was like a stuffed animal,
right?
That was very well done. And as soon as Gigi walked out and saw it, she stole it from the front row and held on to it the entire panel. And eventually, I think they got it back. But,
eventually.
But it was a very good ensemble cosplay of the crew from Moya. It was just amazing. Gigi was very happy to see, and they all sat on the front row where she could see them. And that's part of how we got to know her, because we had to kind of negotiate the return of Rigel to the fans from Gigi.
Okay, and Nathaniel is letting us know he loves B5 too. Glad we all share the love. I mean, somewhere in this room, I'm not sure exactly where, but somewhere in this room is everything. All the BSG, all the B5, all the... What do we not have in here? We have Star Trek, we have Stargate, everything in this room somewhere. Yeah, but all the B5 is here, including Crusade, because, Crusade also. And there's a question, any thoughts on getting Sequest added? We have talked about it before. Partly that kind of goes back to our definition. Some of it really did have to have a couple of elements of, usually there was some space exploration involved. And there was also usually a military element involved somewhere along the lines. And the military often was the one driving the space exploration. So we hadn't really got into Sequest so much for that reason. But the team aspect, I think,
Yeah.
kind of works more with us. So who knows? It might end up coming to us at some point.
Was
But
Sequest
not
not
yet.
a military operation?
Not in space.
It has been so
I
long
mean-
since I've
Not really.
seen Sequest. But I mean, I think it could, if it's. I thought it was a military operation.
Space exploration where they go to another planet.
It's kind of on that border of things that are similar to us, but aren't quite us. Okay, yes. Space Above and Beyond, on the other hand, actually, that is one of ours. And if there is anybody who ever was, Nathaniel, interest noted, of course, too. If there ever is anybody who would like to add in some love for Space Above and Beyond, I'd be happy to consider a panel on that next year. We haven't really done much with that particular one yet. James, do you have the list somewhere nearby? I can pull up from the Facebook group. So we have quite a few different properties. Now, from the 4, we added about 5 more that next year. And since then, we've just continued adding things. So one of the things that we're going to be looking at is all of our list of different things that we're doing. Now, here's where we come into some qualifications. Like I said, we're military. We're space exploration, we're team involvement. All of that stuff is there. But there's also some other things going on. There has to be, certain things that we can't touch. One of those is Star Trek. Star Trek is not actually one of ours. So, it's my onesie. I like it. Leave me alone. But that is one of the things that really is its own thing. Star Trek is far too massive for us to ever try to fit in, even though in a lot of ways it kind of does fit in with what we do. It's just too big. It's too much. There's just no way we can effectively ever address that. And some on the other edge of some of the things we do are things maybe like Star Wars. But again, it's its own thing. It is way too massive. There is no way we can actually do that in any way that actually makes sense. And plus, the Star Wars people would probably strangle us in our sleep for cutting down their content so we could talk about anything else. And also, I'd have to talk to Brandy, and she wouldn't like that. So that's one of those things. Do you have any else? So when we're looking at stuff of what really fits in, there are some things that we have and some things that we don't. Sometimes if they're really obscure, they're not in there. Sometimes if they're too big, they're not in there. Or sometimes if they're just edge enough, they're not quite what is considered our brand, so to speak, they're not in there. So I'll talk to you about what is in our list of properties, just so that you have a better idea of what is MSFM. And hi, Robert, by the way. Just wanted you to know we weren't missing you over there. We're very happy to see you still. Okay, so one of those things, even though, yeah, I know, I just said we don't have Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda. That is actually one of our properties. So it's fun too, because a lot of these shows have interesting crossovers in actors. Because talk about one of our major crossovers right there in Andromeda.
Well, we had Michael Shanks and Lexa Doig, who are now married, that were both on Stargate. So there's a crossover there. We also had Christopher Judge. We actually had Christopher Judge versus Michael Shanks in Andromeda. 2 different ship AIs battling it out. So you got your crossover again. 3 actors just right there with Stargate.
And of course, many other actors doing many other things and lots of other crossovers as well from that one. And we should probably do some more Andromeda. Yeah, and basically, since Everywhere in Space is located somewhere in Vancouver, that's pretty much how it works.
It's that one field.
Hi, Kristen, by the way. Just want to say hello. Hello. Also, hi, Mary Ellens. Good to see you. Very happy to see you online with us today. And hi, Will. Nice to see you too. And that, I can say we probably could do some more with Andromeda. We haven't done as much with it in recent years, but especially if we could ever get Michael Shanks and Lexa and some of those other folks back, I'd be more than happy to do some stuff with that for sure. Other shows that we are also involved with, responsible for, however you want to think of that. Babylon 5, of course, as I've mentioned, of course, Babylon 5/Crusade, because that's also part of it, because Van out of Plexico, one of our track folks, major panelist for us, let's put it that way, he would very much be sad if I left Galen off the list. And all the other lovely people that were on Crusade as more of a focus there. And I have to say, Crusade, I never quite got into it as much. I think that it was kind of a victim of the time frame and victim of not having more time to develop its storyline. So I would love to have seen what they would have done with it as they continued to grow that series. That would have been nice. Okay, Legends of the Rangers, some love for that too. Yes, we'll make sure that goes in there.
Yeah. Fortunately, it's not in the complete box set of Babylon 5.
Because it's not complete without it? What?
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes box set people, I don't know how they make decisions, but they really are odd how they work out. But okay.
Honestly, I think it's what the studio will allow.
And that's a fair point. What they have rights and clearances onto. I'm still mad that one of my series that I had an unabashed love for, and no, this isn't sci-fi, but follow me here, never actually came out because on DVD ever, because they couldn't get clearance for the music. And that's a series called Cold Case. It was really kind of neat because they would basically show as the murder that was being committed or whatever was happening in real time back in the day with period music and everything. Characters, aged down back to whenever the actual crime happened for the cold case. And it was like an amazing episode, actually, that featured the 1930s and illicit relationship. And it was like really fabulous. But, some of the music, they don't necessarily have rights. Worst ones were, of course, ones that were set in the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. And because they would just have to pay too much for all that. And so they couldn't get the rights worked out. And they've never had a DVD release that I've been aware of. So that's the kind of thing that happens sometimes. Things get caught up in DVD release issues.
I feel like there was a show that had that issue where all the music they used during broadcast, they couldn't get the rights to for the DVD stuff, so they just re-soundtracked the entire thing.
I know
but I don't remember what it was.
And there was one that was kind of prominently a thing, but I can't remember what show it was.
WKRP in Cincinnati had that issue.
Boldface is saying WKRP in Cincinnati had that issue.
I can imagine. It's on the radio there. Nope, you can't use that song. Sorry, no, not going to happen. But no, the episode I was actually talking about in Cold Case, I was thinking of from the 30s, had like a bootlegger and had a lesbian who wrote poetry and was really awesome. And that she was actually played by Tessa Thompson in a early roles before she went on to be Valkyrie and just kick a whole bunch of butt. So just, you never know what you're going to see back in the day and how it's going to connect back to something more Dragon Con-y. But that is one of those sad realities sometimes that happens. Yeah, WKRP mentioned by Nathaniel too.
Who's got questions?
Yes. More questions for us, please. We love your questions. Battlestar Galactica is another property on our list. If I haven't mentioned that one yet, have I? Did
briefly.
Yes. Briefly. That was the thing. I can get all the way into it. Let me just say I've been operating on almost Dragon Con levels of no sleep. So just please be patient as we go through this. Keep all hands inside the vehicle while in motion. Now, with Galactica, of course, we have the two separate pieces of it. And so we do try to work with the classics track because they are, of course, that's a lot of their core material right there. And now that it's been off the air for a minute, it's kind of almost edging back towards that point for even the reimagined version. So, these things happen sometimes. But we still have it, and they can't have it back yet. But we'll let them come play in our sandbox.
We pretend that 1980 doesn't exist.
Well, I'm sorry, what? Were you talking about some 1980s situation? No. No, sweetie, there wasn't one for that. No, there was no BSG.
There were no flying motorcycles or anything.
No, there never was. No.
I feel like I'm happy that I actually have no idea what you're talking about.
Embrace the ignorance, Wiccy.
I embrace it every day.
That is the only time I'll ever say that.
Battlestar 1980, where they
actually
get to
he
Earth.
Said the whole real actual name.
And they send some people down to find out, how Earth actually operates and if they can integrate with people.
Answer poorly.
It did not do well. So most people just forget that it's canon.
Your mind just likes to elide over that little rough patch in history. But anyway, so we're going to go on to our next one. Buck Rogers was also one of the properties we ended up with, and that's been really cool because we've actually gotten to see Gil Gerard on a regular basis, and it's really interesting also to go back into what sci-fi was at that point and kind of see where things are going to now. And that is really neat too, because Erin Gray, of course, being a major part of that is Wilma Deering, but now she's actually acting as an agent and doing lots of other things too. And so occasionally she'll come and speak for us on panels, and that's really lovely of her. And, even though she's technically doing her own thing at this point, working with stuff. And it's really neat, though, to watch how people progress and see what they do later. It's one of the older shows, so every once in a while we'll have a moment where it shows up free somewhere, like for the first series or something, season like that, I think it did. Season, yeah. And that was kind of neat because a whole bunch of people got to rediscover or discover for the first time, really, that, depending on where they were with it.
Yeah, getting to sit in at Gil's panels, he'll talk about whatever when you ask. It's kind of like an Ask Me Anything panel for him. A lot of people don't know that he worked on the fuel for the Titan V rockets. He helped get those rockets up into space, and then when he decided to go into acting, he went to New York and he drove a cab. He drove a cab at night because it was 10 cents extra an hour and he needed the money. And that was back at the time when
10 cents meant a lot, actually.
It did mean a lot, but it was also a very violent time for cabbies at the time. They were getting robbed. People had long knives and were stabbing them through the back of their seat and then taking their money. That's why, you get in a cab today, there's a metal plate behind the seat. You got the cage so people can't reach around and grab you and steal your money and stuff. All of that came out of that time in New York, and he was driving a cab for a while with that stuff going on without those sorts of protections at the time.
Fortunately, Buck Rogers still happened.
Yeah. He had to do Circus of the Stars, where his co-star on that one was an elephant that had actually bumped into him during rehearsal. So he had broken ribs when he did the live show. And then he had to go the same day to film fight scenes for Buck Rogers where he was getting punched and thrown around with broken ribs. And he just didn't have time to go to the hospital before that. They had to tape up his ribs after, But,
nope.
That's that was what you did as an actor at the time to keep a gig like that.
Yeah, the Actors Union not really so powerful at that moment, although obviously it should have been.
Obviously, jeez.
Oh, Nathaniel, we just all agreed we don't mention that. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it was answering a question that we missed.
I know. But I mean, those are the kinds of stories you get from some of these panels. So if you ever are getting to a place where you're like, well, I've gone to hear that person talk before, and I've heard this person talk before. Try somebody different. Maybe even from a show you're not super familiar with. If you've never really watched Buck Rogers before, listen to Gil talk sometime and see what he has to offer. He's got some really interesting stories. All right, so other shows on our list, because we do actually have quite a few other ones. One of those is, as I mentioned previously, Farscape. And that actually there was a big year for Farscape just last year. That was the anniversary. James, you want to talk a little about that one?
So they had a majority of the cast that was there doing a panel. We also had Brian Henson, who was on a panel, and they played a sizzle reel that they had made for some of the film studios, and it seemed like at first it was just like a review of Farscape, like all the way through the Peacekeeper Wars. But then at the end, it suggested that the story would continue.
Yeah, I was like,
and they cut it off. And while they didn't come out right and say it, they said,
everything but it.
Farscape is on Amazon Prime right now, and Amazon is looking very heavily at the numbers of people watching Farscape on Prime right now, because Netflix had passed it up and didn't want to buy the rights to stream it. Amazon snapped it up and then got 10 times what they were expecting in viewership when they, after like a month looking at it. So they seemed to be indicating that Amazon was interested in continuing the series if we kept the numbers up with people watching Farscape on Amazon Prime. And that's the project they were working on.
Now, I haven't heard a lot about that since, because as we all know, things have happened out there in the world right now. They have. But, that's just a really exciting concept, that some of the shows that we really have cared about and loved, and we will watch them again and again in various rewatches and binges, might actually come back to us in some form. And I know that sometimes people worry about that. Even if it's the original cast, well, is it going to be worth it? I mean, is it going to be Fuller House? Or, okay, I don't have an issue with Fuller House, but still. Sometimes when you bring it back, the bloom is off the rose. Sometimes you bring it back, it's changed for the better, even because people have matured. The storyline has matured. Representation has matured. All of those things. But then also, sometimes they reboot it completely and it's just not quite the same. They make some changes. They make actor changes, major ones. Or you can think of things like, say, reimagined BSG. A lot of people really didn't want to see reimagined BSG at first, but I think by the end of it, it won a lot of people over, even if by the very end, we had some concerns and issues, which we'll talk about another time. Unless you really want to talk about it, in which case we'll talk about it later. I promise.
Nope.
Okay.
No, we're talking about that right now.
Okay.
Nope.
One of our others next up in our list of shows is Firefly. And of course, with that also goes Serenity. And if you ever want to look at the poster child for didn't have enough time, that would be Fire freaking Fly. So that's a big one for us. We were really sad when the Whedon track went ahead and kind of went its separate ways, but it was part of the reorganizational process because we had so much stuff to offer that it was really hard to keep things to just single director situations. And also, can you imagine if the Avengers were all now just like a section of the Whedonverse? That wouldn't even quite make sense at this point. So it was part of the reorganization, and looking for a place for Firefly, they, we were like, yes, us, please, us over here. I know it's not straight military, but hey, they were in a war, and it was a whole war thing that happened, and there were two sides, and they were fighting each other, and then one won, and the other is still trying to deal with that. And then actually the people who win are not super okay with how they won or something, because they keep trying to stomp out everybody else's rebellion, whether or not it's actually rebellion. And they're also hiding a big secret, which is revealed in Serenity. So yeah. Now, of course, that's
Or
one of
the
those
trailers for the show, depending on which secret we're talking about.
That's true. There are quite a few secrets as the time goes on. But
Thanks,
that was
Fox.
yeah. But that was one of those things that definitely was like, but it's a team in space with militaristic elements, and they're dealing with a larger force that is pursuing them and creating issues. Hey, that sounds kind of like Farscape. Just saying, there's some connections.
Yoink. That's our sex bye.
So that one became ours, and we were so happy to have it. And also, every year since then, we have had the Can't Stop the Signal dance, which is our Firefly dance, and we like to have a good time. We light up the ballroom with various flashy lights, but we also light up with little jar lights that look like fireflies in the jar because, hey, I am sometimes literal. But we also put things on the tables to play around with, like little army men and little aliens, because I also am having a good time.
And the dinosaurs.
And the dinosaurs, right. There have to be dinosaurs, and if you don't know why, watch the show. And also sometimes little parasols, because if you don't know why, watch the show.
And
If
also,
you've never
if you
watched Firefly,
haven't watched
please.
Firefly yet, what are you
Watch
doing with your life?
Okay. Now, I know that sounds that can easily go, oh, it's so overrated because we're selling it super high, and I understand that. But honestly, Firefly is a good time. Even if it's not 100% your thing, I think you'll still get something out of it. It's got some amazing actors at an earlier place in their career, so you can kind of see how they're growing and how they're changing. And some of them are already fully invested in the people they are at that moment, too. So it's a really neat time, too, that's captured at that moment. And some great dialogue, too. Good interaction with people. So it's quality show. And not just because they pay me. Not just kidding. That's not how that works. All right. So other shows. One of our more recent shows, actually, that we have added in the last few years has been the Orville. And when we added the Orville, actually, that was for our first onesie party, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
We were introducing the Orville as a new series. So we had all sorts of things that were kind of Orville themed, hanging out in the room and stuff like that. And the fun thing about the Orville is that it's not Star Trek, but it is Star Trek. But it's not Star Trek, but it is Star Trek. So that's one of those little back and forths that we're going to be talking about and discussing and debating. That's actually going to be on the Fantrax channel. And James, if you can bring those up for me a little bit, we can talk about when things are going to be airing. So that's going to be one of those important things that we do, because that's actually a one that's broadcasting out to all of DragonCon through the Fantrax channel on the streaming platform.
I believe
So
that
just
one's
be aware
tomorrow.
of that. Yeah, I need to check and see exactly what time that one is, but it's good stuff. So make sure you check that out. Now, as we go through further, moving on down our list, we have another show that's kind of a weird little show. It never quite went super far for reasons which I'll clarify in just a second, but that show is Personal Space. Now, Personal Space is more personal space, but it's also personal space, because it's a show where everybody on the ship is talking to a therapy droid, basically. And they're all trying to figure out, issues. They're kind of mandated to do this thing. They're in space this long. They have to kind of make sure that they're still okay, so to speak. So they talk to therapy droid about things. They discuss what's going on with the crew and other members of the crew and how they're not thrilled with them when they're having to stand down, how that changeover is going to happen, all sorts of different things. But then everything pulls back a little bit, and we find out that, unbeknownst to them, what they're actually on is a reality show. They don't know they're taking part in. So it's when they are doing these confessionals, basically, to have their therapy sessions, that's like a confessional for a TV show. More like, something you might see Real Housewives of Space. I don't know. Maybe not quite that. But very different, of course. And they don't know. So it's really Truman Show-like in that sense. And one of the reasons why we particularly were getting that show on our list, besides the space and other elements, it was one of the last projects of Richard Hatch. And Richard Hatch, being the amazing figure and supporter of sci-fi that he has been throughout his career, and also of the fans, it was one of his last things. We wanted to make sure it was included with us because, after all, Battlestar Galactica, both versions, I'm not, again, we're not addressing 1980, and that is so important for us to be able to have, as part of our shows and part of our information. You need to be able to check that out if you haven't before. It's available through a couple different things. I think that when I saw it last, it was on Amazon Prime as a free thing.
Yeah.
They're kind of short website link things, so it won't take you long to get through it. And unfortunately, since he's passed, there probably won't be, hey, that's something quick you can binge and get through the whole of it. Like Firefly. But that's one of those interesting little sideshow bits that we do try to talk about and mention, though, whenever we mention him. And as a convention, it was truly tragic when he passed in 2017. His absence was very much felt. I was fortunate enough to be able to actually be there on a panel with him back in 2016, I think it was.
Yeah.
And, like with him and a couple of different other people. What else was that year? Alessandro Giuliani was one. And Candace, wasn't she? Candace McClure? Yeah, she was the other one. And so it was great to talk with BSG people, but I didn't know that was going to be my last time to get to see Richard Hatch, my one and only time to get to see Richard Hatch. So a lot of people have some very fond memories of him, and it was a really nice thing if you have a chance to just kind of get to see him again in something when he's doing his thing, acting, having some fun. So Personal Space, if you've never had a chance to check it out. Additionally, we've got some other space things that are just straight up space, one way or another. We have Space Above and Beyond, which we talked about briefly earlier. And Space 1999 was recently added. So we've worked with the Classics and the Brit Track on that one, since that's kind of a three-way to share over with that one. And Space Force. Not the military. Not that branch, but Space Force is a thing. It's the thing that's here. And we're just going to see where it goes. If you haven't had a chance to watch it yet, I mean, Steve Carell is pretty much fun in whatever he does, whether he's being funny or he's being serious, because he has some comedic chops, but he also has some serious acting chops as well. But just, it's an interesting time for the show. That's all I'm going to say. So check that out if you haven't already, because that is one of the new ones, which we will, when we have more space and time, so to speak, be talking about next year for sure. Additionally, some of the others, Space Above and Beyond, that was one I wanted to talk about a little bit. James, you want to give us a little bit more of a background into it, since you're a little bit more versed in that show?
So essentially, humanity is going out to colonize different worlds, and 2 colonies get attacked and destroyed, and we find out that aliens exist out in the universe. First contact is they're blowing up our places, and as it turns out, the corporation that has sponsored all of these colonists to go out had made contact with them previously, and told them that they were going to just keep colonizing whatever worlds they felt like. And they took it out on all of humanity by starting to attack everywhere they could find humans. They wore special spacesuits because they needed different atmosphere. I can't remember if they were silicon based or not, but they had some more advanced spaceships than we did. We were trying to play catch up, and the show was over well before its time. I think it ended in a cliffhanger episode where you didn't know if everybody was alive or not by the end of it. So a second, further season would have really helped with that one. But I like the show a lot. Watched it with my dad when it was premiering every week. So that was some sci-fi father-son time. I hope a lot of these shows were kind of that for myself and family when it aired.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, definitely in my family, that was one of the ways that my family got along. We all watched Star Trek together. We watched Stargate together. Even when my mother started watching things that I really didn't want to go into and watch at the same time, I could have her put on the Stargate episode and we could just sit down and kind of go into that. Same thing with Babylon 5. Like I hadn't watched it for a while, and then she started a rewatch of it, and so I was super happy to just kind of follow along and remember the story with her. And of course, one of my favorite memories is of course Veer waving.
Yeah.
One of the best parts of the entire series. And if you've never seen Babylon 5, to catch that part, do that. That's some good stuff. To finish up our list of properties, since we're almost at the end, and then we're going to talk about other shows and things like that. Stargate. Hey, we might have mentioned that a couple times.
Just once or twice.
Mm-hmm. My theory about Stargate is a lot of times the show you like the best is the one you came in on. And for this, so far, this has been borne in for me a lot for most people. And there's some people who are a little bit later to the Stargate train than some others. And so their first Stargate was Stargate Universe. And SGU is like their thing. That is what they love. That is their favorite. And it's got some amazing actors and some really good characters, even though I submit that the first season perhaps needed a little work overall. But anyway, second season was better. I'll concede that for sure. But then there's a lot of people who kind of came in on the Atlantis part. And that was a really tight cast too, as far as like interacting with each other and getting into kind of a groove for a while. And it got a little bit different once, some key members like Tori Higginson wasn't around anymore. And she was very amazing in her role. But I mean, just one of the most interesting, fun characters ever has to be Rodney McKay. I mean, whether you love him or love to hate him, he is just a force in that show and makes it super interesting. And that was always one of my favorite things about that. And then, of course, that's when the sci-fi world really gets introduced to Jason Momoa in his earlier days, when he would bring tubs of beer up onto the stage at DragonCon. Not a lie, it happened. But yeah, but previous to that, what had he mostly just done Baywatch, I think?
I think Baywatch was his big role before he got on to Atlantis.
But, that was a good role for him. It showed him at a nice level of depth, established him as a serious actor, and then he could do more comedic stuff later. Because everybody, if you've ever really talked to him or heard him on, like just speak as himself, he really isn't that serious for the most part. He's a jovial, happy-go-lucky kind of dude for the most part. So yeah, it's kind of neat to know that personality and then watch him on the show and just kind of make those things play together. And of course, other great actors too, like David Nichol, for one. I mean, he's one of my favorites. And of course, we had Sam Carter herself, Amanda Tapping, on the show eventually as well. Of course, one of our favorites from Firefly, Jewel State. I mean, there she goes, right over there. And Paul McGillian, one of our strong track supporters, who was actually a big help in getting the Don S. Davis Memorial Charity Auction started, because the auction that they did with him kind of really spurred the impetus for an auction the next year. Because, well, maybe James should talk about that first auction that Paul helped us out with.
Well, Paul was trying to get as much money for charity as he could. So towards the end, he started selling a kiss with whoever bought the item. And next thing you know, like, people are checking their checkbook balances down to the penny. It's how much they give to charity to get that kiss.
Because this was 2007 or something like that.
And, like,
people had checks.
like if there was apparel that was being auctioned, he'd put it on. He's like, look, I'll give you the shirt off my back for, another $20.
Didn't the kiss start out as hugs?
It started out as hugs.
It usually does. And then it progresses.
Yeah. Then it was specifically kisses after that.
Yeah.
They're quicker too. Well, sometimes. Anyway,
So, yeah.
we're not going down that rabbit hole. But Paul has actually come back and served as our auction MC a couple different times. Chris Judge has been an auction MC for us. So many different people. And, that's always been one of the fun things. People who care, who really are part of the shows, helping raise money for charity, in the name of Stargate 2. And Don S. Davis, who was an amazing person, but also a really great actor. As well, what was his final title as Hammond?
He was General.
He was General Hammond forever. I don't know what they finally promoted him up to.
Yeah, I think he was 4 stars when he died in the show and real life.
But yeah, that was one of the saddest moments. He was actually supposed to come there in 2008 to the show, but he had passed just a few months beforehand. If I remember, it was like June in 2008, and it was really just super sad. But we had already decided that. We didn't decide. Dragon Con decided. Well, listen to me. That the American Heart Association was going to be the charity that year, and he passed of a heart condition. So it was kind of, seemed like it was meant to be that. Do it for Don. And the track director at the time had, Dollars for Don going and things of those nature to really sort of drive the message home that we can raise money in the name of people that we really value and care about and shows we really loved to help others. And we've continued that with Military Sci-Fi Media every year until this year. We're on hiatus with the Don S. Davis Memorial Charity Auction, but we will be bringing it back bigger and better next year. So just please keep that in mind. It's coming.
Well, and to be fair,
all
of the charity stuff is on hold till next year.
Yes,
so.
This is also part of it. But that takes us to SG1, which is, of course, where I came in, really, because I did see the movie, but actually I saw the movie after the fact. So it's kind of a different moment for me when I'm like, that's not O'Neill. What is this? Where's the other L? Anyway, because in the movie, he is O'Neill with 1 L. In the show, O'Neill, 2 L's. It's a thing. But that was really my first true experience with the show. And it was a really good time, really good actors, a very solid chemistry between Michael Shanks, Chris Judge, Amanda Tapping, and also, of course, Richard Dean Anderson. Everybody mostly knew him from MacGyver really before then, but this was a chance for him to leave his mark on something else, and it was pretty lasting. But that's kind of our course. We always have to come back to it. Last show of ours, and this is where we're about to talk to other things, is the Starship Troopers series to some extent. Now, I say to some extent because, some of the areas are kind of addressed other places with animation and things like that, but Starship Troopers was also part of it. Of course, originally, book by Heinlein, but the version on screen is perhaps a little bit different from the original intention. Just a tad. But really interesting time. And we had the 20th anniversary of that not too long ago, right? I can't remember precisely which year it was. I want to say it was like 2017 or something. But yeah. And that was definitely one of those things. We actually had Casper Van Dien come back for one. And who else was it? Patrick Muldoon? Right?
Patrick.
And Dina Meyer was there that year,
Dina Meyer
too.
was that year. So all three of them, they weren't always on the same panels at the same time, but there was at least one panel with all three of them at once. And she helped keep the guys in check because they were a little gung-ho coming to Dragon Con and enjoying the atmosphere of the fans and the excitement that everybody had. The first panel I had with the guys, they had several people cosplaying troopers that actually stood behind us on the stage during the entire panel, like an honor guard.
You never know what you're going to get at Dragon Con.
That is true.
For sure. Now, other things. We've had people ask before about The Expanse, Dark Matter, a couple other shows, Altered Carbon, some different ones. They're not currently part of our track. Most of them are actually part of American sci-fi and fantasy. But who knows? Maybe at some point they might end up coming our way. Currently, there's no plans for those just yet. But there's always a possibility something else might come our way because we, get a new show or two usually every year.
Same with the Alien franchise.
Mm-hmm. Similarities, like some of the Alien franchise kind of fits, like Aliens, but some of the rest of it not as much. So we have to kind of work with that. So one more thing I wanted to talk about is scheduling. We've got a couple more of these things, the live version scheduled. We have a Mad Libs round that's going to be scheduled where we insert audience chosen terms into the script that have been carefully gutted of words and horrifyingly filled with whatever random crap you guys come up with. And it's airing after 10 on Saturday, live streaming through our Dragon Con, not particularly Dragon Con, MSFM Facebook page. And it's the page, not the group, just to clarify, just like this one. Now, another thing, too, that we've got coming up after that for another live panel is kind of our usual sort of debriefing at the end where we talk to everybody on the last day. How did things go? What would you like to see next year? For this year, please tell us what you would like to see next year for sure. As we're going to have a little time to start thinking about that and figuring out what we're going to do. We won't always know, of course, things like we don't get to know who the guests are until they're really announced, but we can always talk to people about what we'd like to see and make sure we start working on fan programming and all as well. So James has a list of our 3 recorded panels that will be airing on the fan tracks. Now, the times are kind of around here and there. And so let's go ahead and talk about what we've got.
All right. Our first panel that's going to show on the fan track channel for Virtual Dragon Con is on Friday at noon. It's the Orville versus Star Trek cage match panel.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
So that's where we start off at. And then Sunday morning at 1 a.m., we have the MSFM Villains Tournament, the Sweet 16, which quickly pairs down to 8 to actually duke it out by our panelists and get eliminated to move on down. And then...
and just note, so what you could do if you're looking to have an evening with MSFM, you could come to Mad Libs with us from 10 to 11 earlier that night and then just stay up 2 more hours and then watch the Villains panel.
And then just stay up a few more hours because
it's Dragon Con and why the heck not?
Yeah.
Well, because then our next panel is is it not 7 a.m.?
Well, it's the next day.
Yeah, 7 a.m. on Monday. Our quarantines, where we talk about different quarantine episodes for our shows and try to decide which group you would rather be quarantined with from the shows that we cover.
The answer may surprise you, or may not, depends. But you'll have to see to find out. 7 a.m. Also, of course, if y'all have purchased the streaming membership, you'll be able to see them after they've aired live too, in case you're not able to catch them. So that's something to think about. Do some streaming memberships, be able to catch stuff you may not be able to see in the moment when it's streaming. And then, of course, hey, you could always check back in with us for our live panel through Facebook at 2 that same day on Monday to close things out. Now, we're also going to be hanging out at various points on the Discord server, the Military Sci-Fi Media section in the West End Hotel on the system. If you haven't been on there yet, check that out. We have information on how to do that in our Facebook group. Speaking of our Facebook group, if you look for Military Sci-Fi Media at DragonCon with the @ symbol, you should be able to find us pretty easily and go ahead and request to be added there. I'd be more than happy to put you in. If you're already there, yay, you're one of us. Woo! And we'll be happy to keep talking with you. And you can post all sorts of different things. We have a flashback thread right now. Post stuff that you've seen us do before, that you had pictures of and you like, or costumes of yours from previous Dragon Cons, or costumes of other people from previous Dragon Cons. You know, it's all kinds of just having a good time, hanging out with each other, sharing some memories, and, you know, making something out of this time, having a good time.
Make the best of what we have.
It's not always going to be easy, and this is kind of our kickoff panel. This time last year when we were doing our onesie kickoff, we were all gathered in our room having a good time. We had giant life-size Jenga and giant checkers on the floor. We had balloons. We had shark heads and everything else. We had a really good time. But, you know, as long as we can still be gathered somewhere, even if it's online, then that's nice. We can still talk to each other, still hang out, still be friends and fans, and further celebrate the magic that is DragonCon. So we're going to go ahead and end. We've gone maybe a few minutes over, but I wanted to make sure everybody had a chance to chat with any final questions. If there's anything else or comments that you want to talk about, let me know. Give you a couple of seconds to think about that, but we will be around various points online here and there. If you have anything else you want to talk about, let us know. Oh, hey, Eric. Hi. Eric is one of our major original BSG cosplayers. Very awesome costumes. And did a very good Klinger last year. So please do go ahead and just check in with us, talk with us. And we look forward to speaking with you guys and hanging out this weekend. So, Wiccy,
What?
Want to say bye?
Bye.
James, want to say bye?
Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll be seeing about posting this to our YouTube channel later for people to catch up with, as well as it'll be on the Facebook group for people that may have missed it to watch it. And hope you guys have a great virtual Dragon Con and a great weekend.
Enjoy things, do stuff, check out things you wouldn't normally. And thank you to Eric. Bye.